Martinus explains that depending on whether you eat plant-based or meat-based food, you either start a peaceful process or an explosive process in your stomach. Our food consists of micro-living beings that our stomach has to digest in order to make it into nutrition. This process in our stomach can be more or less draining for our body, depending on what kind of living beings that are in the food that we eat. Plant-based food consists of simpler living beings that are easier to overcome for our body than the meat-based food are. So the whole process will be more peaceful in the stomach and also for the living beings that are within the food. The meat-based food consists of more complex living beings that can have a conscience close to our own, and this is much more difficult for our body to overcome. This video will give you a spiritual view on our digestion and the implication from this view on plant-based and meat-based food. It also digs into why our choice of food is much broader than we usually think about it in terms of health and ethical issues, because we introduce the notion that the food and our stomach consist of living beings that interact with each other. This video takes a departure in the work of the Danish author named Martinus. I cannot go into all the details in this video, but I will bring some of them forth about the microcosmos we have within our bodies. But tag along in future videos where I will go into much more details about his work. Martinus explains that our bodies consist of living beings. Our organs are living beings. They are well organized and have a function. The cell, molecules, and atoms are living beings as well. It might sound a little bit strange, but let's talk about what the actual sign of life is. So in order to get organs, cells, molecules, and atoms functioning, there has to be some kind of plan to make them function. Planning cannot take place without being identical to thoughts. And thoughts are functions in our consciousness. So these signs of planning and logic is a sign of life. So let's take a look at our own body. Our own body shows a lot of order when we look at it. The different organs and other functions in the body has to be in a specific place to actually work. So we also see intent and planning in our daily life. We can plan to build a house where we can live and protect us, for instance, from the bad weather. We can take an education to improve our contribution in life. We can eat and sleep to maintain our body. There's a lot of intent. There's a lot of planning, and we see it as a sign of life. So there are plenty of examples where we as human beings express intent and planning. We usually don't perceive the parts of our bodies as something that has intent, but it has order, which shows planning. So if the planning gets out of order, we become sick and we can ultimately die from it. Martinus states, as I said before, that there is conscience behind planning and order. We know it from ourselves, as I gave examples on from our own life. We cannot build a house without thinking and planning it out before. It will go wrong if we don't do that. The same goes for the parts in our bodies. So there is a consciousness behind the function of our organs to make them function as needed to make our body function. So our body has to have a very specific logic and planning in order to work. Martinus explains that the same goes for our cells, molecules, and atoms. They also have functions, planning, and order. We see it described in our current science, where we can describe different laws and predict how different things are working. But from a spiritual perspective, these entities can be as alive and advanced as we are as human beings. Martinus calls the living beings that are smaller physical bodies than us micro-living beings. Consciousness of living beings are at different levels or different qualities. We know that humans have more intelligence and feelings than animals. Thus, humans have a higher developed consciousness than animals. Animals have more consciousness than plants, so they are more developed than plants. Animals has a clear consciousness, whereas plants only has awareness of what is going on in the physical world. Minerals have no consciousness on the physical plane. Thus, we perceive minerals as dead matter and less developed than plants on the physical plane. So our body consists of living beings that are smaller than us, their consciousness as well. The quality of the consciousness that we find in humans, animals, plants, and so forth are also found in the microcosmos. And this is pretty important when we have to think about food. The micro beings are living beings with the same advanced feelings and intelligence as we can find at our own level, that being in humans, animals, plants, and so forth. Martinus explains that our bones and nails are like minerals without physical consciousness as the minerals. That's the reason why we can cut them without hurting. He explains that our muscles are like plants with awareness. Our stomach living beings have the same type of consciousness as animals. But more about all this stuff in another video. So essentially we find the same type of consciousness in small living beings as well in large living beings. So the quality of consciousness is independent of the size of the body. So what is going on in our stomach can be as advanced as it is at our own level when it comes to consciousness. Our food consists of millions of micro-living beings that have consciousness at the same quality level that we find in animals, plants, and minerals. There can be a peaceful existence or a hellish one for these living beings who live in our stomach. And we'll go into this in the next section of this video. In order to understand our digestion, we have to understand that it's only a fraction of the food that goes into our body as nutrition, and the rest goes out as feces. The part of the food that gets obtained in our body consists of very simple living beings. But the food also consists of more advanced living beings that have the consciousness level like plants and animals. When we eat plant-based food, we'll get the living beings that we can obtain, plus some living beings at the plant level that we cannot obtain directly into our body. The living being at the plant level that we cannot obtain has to be killed in our stomach to get into the smaller, more simple living beings that we actually obtain in our body. This process is known as digestion. Digestion is work for our body and requires energy, but our stomach is suited for plant-based food and is not too much of a burden. The living beings in the plant-based food are at the plant level, so they only have awareness and not fully consciousness in the physical world. Thus, they are much easier for the body to overcome and get the nutrition from the plants. In meat-based food, we find more advanced living beings than we find in the plants. These living beings are much harder for our stomach and body to overcome. Martinus describes that explosions occur at the atom level in the process to get the actual nutrition freed from the food. Meat digestion is a war at the microcosmos level in the stomach, and our body is no longer suited for this. Human beings are so developed today that our system gets undermined with sickness over time by the meat-based food. Predators like lions have a digestion system that are suited for meat eating, so it's not a problem for them. But we are not predators anymore. Martinus describes us as partly animals and partly what he calls real human beings, but that's a topic for another video. Martinus states that when we become real human beings, at some point in the future, we'll only eat fruit. The nutrition in fruits transfers directly from the stomach into our body without any killing of living beings at all. But we are not living in the future, and our bodies are still so used to digesting a good amount of food, so the ideal for us is still plant-based and live as vegetarians. So being a vegetarian has the purpose to eat food that is ideal for our current state of our body. Eating plant-based is better suited to our body than both meat and fruit-based diets. But there's also an ethical aspect to being a vegetarian that is much broader than we usually perceive. Some people become vegetarians because they don't want to be the cause of killing animals. The notion of microcosmos extends the consequences of meat eating to killing micro-living beings as well. It broadens the ethical perspective way beyond killing animals when we eat meat. We are not just responsible for the animals, but also for the micro-living beings in our body, because they have consciousness and can experience discomfort and suffering as we can, and as well as animals. These micro beings are more distant from us, or even something we cannot practically experience, but that doesn't mean that they are not there and we don't have a responsibility for them. Not eating meat has an influence on so many levels in regards to health and the way we treat our living beings that it's worth considering. But it's also important that we live according to our own beliefs and what inspires us to do. Feel like meeting is the right thing for you to do, then keep up with it. The goal here is not to make people doing something they don't want, but to inform and inspire. But if you start to think that it might not be completely okay to eat meat, then it's worth considering to become a vegetarian. If you feel inspired to go vegetarian, then be smart about it, but don't be afraid. What you eat is not that important to other people as you might think it is, or at least that's important as it is to you. Most other people really don't care. So don't be afraid to become a vegetarian if that's what you feel is right. So with these words, and having introduced living beings in our stomach, that what we eat actually matters, that the vegetarian food is a little bit less draining on our body than the meat food, then I'll just say thanks for watching, and if you like the video, then give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you feel like that. Thank you for watching.